Hey, this is JC Hurtado-Prater. Thank you so much for watching today. I am so excited about Monday Motivation today. I've got my dear friend. I would almost say he's like an older brother to me. He's a man I can come to whenever I need help or wisdom. We've probably known each other for about 5 years since I came to the church, and we've had
Absolutely.
so many lunches together. We've had so many talks right there on his back patio, back patio where he's at. Many of you know him from our church. His name is JD Dickson. So I want you to welcome here today to Monday Motivation, JD Dickson, and we're going to have a great conversation today. You don't want to miss this. Now, JD, let's start off. I just want to ask you, tell me about you. Tell us about you, kind of your career, your family. Who are you, JD?
Oh man, you sure you want to do this in 10 minutes?
And we got to keep this under 10 minutes.
First of all, thank you for even considering me to do this. I appreciate the thought and the fact that you hold me in such high regard and esteem. Jason, and even for you as well, I think you could probably do your own little portrait of motivation and leadership, just the development I've seen in you in the last 5 years as well. So thank you very much for even choosing me out of the plethora of folks you have available.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, and as for who I am, I'm JD. I'm simple. It's simplicity of life. That's the way I look at it, right? We are the culmination of all our acts. And I think this moment in my life, who I am today, is a humbling moment. My wife, Tanya, 2 kids, Victoria and Nisa. I never dreamed I'll be here, to be honest with you. And nor did I have a specific focus on where I would be. But who I am is humble and a lifelong student. I'm always willing to learn. I'm always willing to adapt and change. And therefore, each day is a new outcome. All right. And I have been in the Navy for 25 years. Chief Warrant Officer in the Navy of that, which is basically saying I'm the subject matter expert. At least that's the expectation, right? I am definitely not a subject matter expert. So my mantra, I guess, of always willing to learn is allowing me to adapt to every changing environment I've been placed in. And I've found success under the grace of God. So yeah, that's where I am.
And I love JD when you say always willing to learn, because that's one of the things, I think that's why we connect so deeply, is every time I talk to you, you've got something new going on, something new and exciting, this role that you're in right now. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. You always have something new and you're always about development and learning. And I think that's why you've been placed in such high esteem in the Navy. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because this job that you're at, I remember when you first got it, and it's pretty incredible what's going on right there, and you've been re-upped for that, so that's pretty exciting. Let me ask you a quick question. When you hear the word motivation, what does that word motivation mean to you?
Oh, man. It's one of those terms that I truly believe it has so many meanings, right? Motivation is that inclination within yourself, and it could be internal or external, right? Sometimes as a leader, I have to find that some folks, they lack internal desire to perform, and therefore I have to apply external methods in getting them to do certain things. So motivation is influence, right? It goes hand in hand with are you a servant leader? Are you a leader, or are you willing doer? And I truly believe that, and at some point, no matter where you are in life, father, husband, leader, no matter where you are in this world, you're either a follow leader, a servant, or a servant leader, they call it today, or you are the leader. You're making those decisions, those tough decisions no one else wants to make. And I think it's the ability for me to dance in both worlds, because in certain areas of my life, I lack internal desire to do certain things, and I need the external pressures of the world. And Tanya my wife has been an outstanding advocate in my development. And she has applied the external motivation, sometimes the external influence, to keep me on track and keep me on path. And then New Hope has been extremely wonderful in my development, in grounding me to what's important and identifying my value system. I say all that because, again, your question as far as motivation, it's vast.
Mm.
And it could come from so many components of your life. But who you choose to surround yourself with, your board of directors for your life, is what
Yes.
determines the influence you will have in terms of responding to motivation.
I love that, JD. And you and I, before we even got onto this, this interview, we spent an hour and 15 minutes, just you and I on FaceTime, just talking, man, 'cause that's what we do. And we talked about the idea of the board of directors. Explain that, because I think that's a good thing for people to hear. Explain the idea of the board of directors for people to have in their own lives.
Well, and again, being the lifelong learner, I tell you these things because suggestions that came to me either via me trying to learn something or someone influencing me. So in this particular moment, it's someone that has influenced me. Is my really good friend and mentor, Joe Lara, who works for the Honor Foundation. So Joe, if you're listening to this, you gave me this tasking and I have been absolutely unsuccessful. So, that being said, Joe had tasked me to find my board of directors, right? Someone who is sage and wise. My North Star, basically, I could point to and say, you know what, I want to be like that person. Someone who's younger, the antagonist, the heckler in the background, who will provoke my thought process.
Yeah.
And then someone lateral to me, right? Someone who I can look at and share my thoughts and share my dreams and my goals and be human and be vulnerable to that person and really expose my true nature so that I can get honest feedback on who I truly am today. So having those three components around you constantly to provide and to continually feed you, so that as you move forward, you get, they call it the red team, blue team in the Navy or in the military. So as you continue to move forward in life, you constantly have people speaking into you from a realistic perspective on where you are, because every single day, based on growth, and in some cases based on regression, we change. All right. Mm-hmm. Our tomorrow is defined by who we are today and what we do today. So I need people who are with me on this journey. Now, I say all that because, from a philosophical perspective, it sounds dreamy, but I have not, Jason, I consider you one of my board of directors.
Same for you, JD. Same for you. Am I the heckler? I'm the antagonist.
I'm not going to tell anyone where they fell into that mix. But I love it.
I love that, JD. And I think, for those who are watching today, especially those who are in leadership, and that's going to be my next question to you about leadership. But for those of us who consider ourselves leaders or call ourselves leaders, we've got to be surrounded by people who speak truth to us, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, the worst leaders, and I know some, man, and I'm sure you know some too, the worst leaders are the ones who have nobody around them that speaks truth into them. Right. And so I think that we've got to be cautious and I can't worry about those leaders. I can only worry about myself. And so I've got to have people around me. And JD, for sure, you are one of the sages that I come to, and you know that for a fact, when I have questions. So I love that. I love that idea of the board of directors. Talk to us. And you mentioned a little bit earlier, but JD, you are, and I've seen you in action on Coronado, on the Navy base there. I've seen you in my own life. I've seen you at the church. You are the essence of a leader, and I'm not just saying this, man. This is something I've always felt about you. That's one reason why I wanted to get to know you way back when we first met. You were the essence of a leader. Talk to us about leadership today. What's your philosophy on leadership? What makes a great leader from your perspective?
So I want to go back to something you just said. Some of us have had bad leaders, but we learn from them, right? And you got to ask yourself, if they're so bad, how in the world did they end up in a position of leadership?
That's good.
All right. So they've obviously had values that someone found important in their organization to place them on that mantle of leading other folks. So what we consider bad may not be bad.
That is so good, JD. That's really good. Yeah. That's great, man.
We they may have bad habits or we don't necessarily align with their values. And the truth is, you have to your moment of interaction with that person, your level of development in that particular moment may not have necessarily be parallel or coincide or in concert with their capabilities. So therefore, what they're doing is foreign to you. And that lack of understanding that you may have, you may want to categorize it. And that's where we get into trouble. We want to categorize things to make it easier for our minds to understand and accept. So we place them in easy boxes called good and bad, right? So they may not be bad. They just may be out of this world for a moment based on where you are today.
That is, hey, I want to stop there for a second. That's gold, JD. See, y'all are seeing why I come to this guy when I need when I need answers in my own life. So what you're saying there is, there's probably no such thing as a bad leader. Sometimes we think they're bad because they don't fit our agenda, right?
Correct.
There's something that we can always learn from. You know, keep going, man. I got to start taking notes on this, man. That is brilliant, JD. That's brilliant.
No, well, it's learned because I've had to deal with so many personalities, and in my world, unfortunately, a lot of the sailors that I've had the opportunity of leading, because of my inexperience, lack of understanding and empathy, I realized that I did the wrong things in their development, and I probably didn't utilize all the tools at my disposal. And I made rash decisions based on emotions, like most people do. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I've negatively impacted certain people's lives because of that. But it's understanding that that was part of my growth and development, right? So I could be someone's bad leader as well, based on when they interacted with me and my level of development. So that being said, I also believe that leadership is not linear. I believe it's exponential. I believe that you may have had a bad moment with someone now, but later on down the road, that same person could be a completely different person based on their own experiences and influences. Mm-hmm. So I believe it's having the ability to not just see people for who they are right now, but it's to really have empathy and looking from their perspective or point of view onto why they're making the decisions they're making. Once you start looking beyond the surface, the superficial, what's obvious in front of you, you start seeing the depth and why people are the way they are and what motivates them, their value system, right? So I believe that leadership, to go back to your original question, leadership is adaptability.
Wow.
And to be adaptable, you have to have empathy. To have empathy, you have to have understanding. To have understanding, you got to have education. To have education, you have to identify yourself as being in need of information. So,
wow.
It requires work. Yeah. It requires work. It requires due diligence. And
absolutely.
Initially, you think, and you look at, you and I have had many conversations, right? So we are, and I want to make sure we're clear here, folks. I really thought Jason was older than me for quite a period of time of our interaction.
Man, don't put that out there, man. Don't put that out there, man.
And you look, because of how you carried yourself.
Just so you know, you look older than I do, JD. So I don't know how you ever thought I was older than you.
Well, you carried yourself well, Jason.
Well, I appreciate that. I learned from you, man. I learned from you, man. Old man.
But we're in the fall of our lives, right?
Yes. You know what? Talk to us about that, JD. That was going to be a question I have. We had this dynamic conversation the other day where we started talking about being in the fall. Speak about that when you talk about leadership and how we grow. You and I are in a different season. We're both in our 40s now, and so we're in a different season. And speak about the fall of our lives, but speak about what advice can you give for somebody else who's in our own age bracket, male or female, and they're in the same stage. How do we use this next season we're in for impact, for significance, for legacy? You talked all about that. Tell us a little bit about that.
I may get off track here, so bring me back if I do.
Go ahead. Yeah, please.
Because so many things came to my mind as you said that. So I want to make sure I give credit where it's due. I initially heard of this, or the thought process, or the metaphor from T.D. Jakes.
Love T.D. Jakes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, he was the one who really brought it. And I did more research into it, and it made sense. So I often refer to it. So the spring of our lives, right? We're first born. Again, someone planted the seeds into who we are, our parents, our environment, things that we had no control over. That was the spring of our lives. You're just born, and I'm not sure when you graduate from the spring into the summer of your life, but I would estimate around your 20s, right? Your early 20s, late teens, early 20s, when you're now taking all the seeds of someone, the crop that they planted into you, the things that you had no control over, and now you're starting to blossom. Now you're starting to bloom, and you're taking all the things that someone had put into you, whether it be good fertilizer, whether it be good seed, whether it be soil would be right, all these things that you had no control of in the very beginning of your life. Now it's starting to bloom.
Wow.
And you're starting to see, you know, you're in your 20s, those decisions are making. So people that grew up in the right neighborhood, people that, you know, had great education, a great foundation to begin with. You start seeing them peaking early in their 20s because they had all the right tools, right? In the very beginning given to them. Now you have some people who never had the right tools, right? But they, for some reason, they figured out how to break through, you know, and there's many leaders out there to include Tony Robinson. He's one of those speakers I listen to often.
Love Tony Robinson.
Started from a really rough beginning. If you heard his story, right? He weren't given the tools, all right? And so he had his summer, his life, he had to endure pain. He had to endure some suffering. He had to fall. And in that fall, we can take that as another spring of our life, right? We can take that and we can start dumping more fertilizer, right? How do you deal with a natural fall in life? Maybe a bad choice. It could be a horrible investment. Some people, it's marriage. We don't know what it is, but whenever we face challenge that at the moment may seem insurmountable, that's where you realize, hey, I can overcome, you know? And so that could be another spring. And for some, it could truly be another summer where you graduate into the fall of your life, where we are, right? So late 30s, early 40s time frame. And that fall is where, all right, I just had my harvest, right? And I'm raking in all of that hard work I did in my early 20s and my 30s, and I'm pulling it in to the fall of my life where I'm gathering. I'm gathering all of my crops now. And now that I have all my crops gathered, I can either now make another investment into life.
Wow.
And that could be into finances. It could be into my kids. And that's where we get in trouble, right? Because now we're wise, all right? We believe that our experiences, that your fall is a culmination of all your experiences up until that moment. And now you want to give into society. Now you want to give into life. And some people start hoarding, right? Some people give the squirrel effect, preparing for the winter, and they start hoarding all of the things they've harvested, while others choose to give in this life. And I realize one is so much related to the other. And in that regard, I think it's somewhat linear, because depending on what I do in my fall is what prepares me for the winter. And you realize the winter, and thank God you and I are not there yet, and for those that are there yet.
Well, I mean, you are closer to the winter than I am. Just I just for the record.
It's a matter of perspective, but we'll come back to that. But I realize that, you know, again, why I look and I try to listen to a lot of folks in the winter of their life, because there's a lot of lessons learned to gain from that, right?
Yes.
And there's a lot of folks with regrets. There's a lot of folks that want to continue to teach because they realize, and they all say the same. There's something that's so similar with all of the lessons in the winter when you listen to all the folks speak, and it's why wait? Why wait to get where I am to learn the lessons that I've learned? Why don't you listen to me now? So I'm very, and that's where I'd be honest with you, my thought process today is so different. If you met me 10 years ago, it's so different because I am now I love, and fortunate for me as a child, I grew up, my mother was a nurse, my grandmother was a nurse, so I was always around folks in the winter of their lives.
Wow.
So I've always had a profound respect for what they had to provide to me. And You know, for good and for bad, they've provided so much information. So I realized that my natural state when I'm around folks in their winter of their lives is always a state of learning. I'm
Yeah.
always available, right? And it's to make yourself available to them. May be to help them, but I realized as a child in my spring, when my parents placed me in that environment with all these folks in their winter, what it did initially, I thought I was helping them, right? I was always there to assist them. But, you know, I may move something for them that's a little bit heavier. I may reach something that's a little bit too high for them. But while I'm doing the act, they're providing so much knowledge of things they have learned in their lives that have spoken into my life.
Wow.
And, you know, and I always think, you know, so another lesson I learned from a guy named Jim Quick. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Great speaker. But from Jim Quick, I learned the different state of your mind, right? And I've learned the alpha, beta, theta, delta. And I've learned that we operate constantly in a beta state of mind, right? You're very conscious and deliberate with what you're doing. My goal personally is to try to always work myself into the alpha and theta state, right? Delta is when you're asleep. So you're in the shower, you're taking a shower, and all of a sudden, a problem that you had 2 weeks ago, you're in the shower, and all of a sudden, boom, solution. And I realized that's a theta state. So I realized that when you have a problem, is you can't solve, your mind is working on that problem for you on a subconscious level, one that you are not familiar with, one that you're not conscious of. But here you are in the shower, and all of a sudden, boom, I got an answer. Well, I bring you back, and I say this to you, is that my goal, as I listen to these older folks, right, and they're in their beta state, but so many of their life lessons have been in the theta and then in the alpha state, so many of their successes. And I realized that their message is very clear. The problem will be solved if you do what you need to do to fix it.
Wow.
So why stress of the immediate when you have nothing? If you identify right now, I can't fix this problem, but I've done all I can in this moment to solve that problem, let it be. Let it be for a moment. And you realize you have, they call it the aha moment, 2 days, 3 days from now, right? And you realize, boom, my mind has been working on this problem. You know, you're trying to remember a name, and all of a sudden you're driving down the road 3 hours later, and the name pops. How does that happen? Your mind subconsciously has been working on your behalf. I say that because, and there's so many things in this life, is that you realize, you know, why did I stress about it 5 minutes ago? Why did we fight? Why did we argue over it? And why did we waste so much time working on the negative, working on what's not important, when I should have just been focusing on what was right in front of me in that moment and enjoying that moment? And that's where you get folks in the fall of their life, right? They get in the winter of their life. They get to pour into you.
Yes.
So again, even though I'm in the going in, I'm transitioning now. I'm still in transition, Jason, into the fall. I'm not admitting 100% that I'm in the fall of mine, but I'm transitioning into it. I find myself in the spring of my learning. Right? Where all these folks are just, they're pouring it. And now the internet, the proliferation of technology has opened up a library in front of us. I can go on YouTube and learn so many things today that was not available. You remember back in our days, looking at encyclopedia? You remember that, Britannica?
I remember that. Yeah, my punishment was to look at the encyclopedia. Yes.
Now you just type it in Google, you know.
That's right. That's right.
And all you got to do is decipher, was it Britannica or Wikipedia? You know, where did I get my information from? But I think it's very important that you identify where you are, and because where you are defines your state of learning.
Wow.
All right. And sometimes we're blocked off. Sometimes because of the spring of our lives, we realize that, you know, we block certain things off that, you know, that was incomprehensible for us 10 years ago. You know, where now I am willing to, okay, let me open my aperture of learning here and make myself available to this information and allow my alpha and my theta to constantly work on my behalf. I may not understand it right now, but the fact that I was willing to receive it allows me to be available to when that information is understandable for me to gain. So I think that somewhat summers that up to you.
That is incredible. And again, JD, one of the things I appreciate about you is that you were constantly in a season of learning. And I like what you said, even for those of us who are in the fall, or I'll be honest, people like me, and there are other people watching who probably got started a little, I'm a late bloomer, right? So I spent most of my 20s screwing up, making a bunch of mistakes. So still kind of getting there. No matter what season we're in, it's a learning season. Right? It's a learning season. And probably even when we get to our winter years and the people that we look up to, you and I, when we talk to them and they're in their winter years, the one with the white hair on their head and their wives, they still see themselves in a season of learning, right?
Correct.
And so I love what you say about learning from the people that come they're in the season before us. So if I'm in fall, I want to learn from those in winter. If I'm in spring, I learn from those in fall. But also understand that I'm still in my own season of learning as well. That's incredible. It's all about growth and learning. Man, that's an incredible answer. The other day when we were talking, and this might come back to kind of what you just mentioned right there. You said something to me, and it blew me away. Let me see. Oh, okay. You talked about the importance of not judging people based on and I might get this wrong. You said it so much better. I'm going to say it. Not judging people based on your expectation or their potential, but judging people based on right where they are today. Can you talk about that? Because you're going to say it 10 times better than I just did.
No, again, relationships are a dance, right? You look at the tango when it's perfectly executed. Again, it's a practice move, right? One person moves a foot forward, the other person moves a foot behind in order to it to be effectively practiced. And that's a relationship. Today, who you are is very much going back to motivation and leadership. Today, who you are is state dependent on who you were yesterday. And so how do you constantly have a successful, and I say successful, a cordial relationship and maintain love? Let's say it's with your wife, your girlfriend, or I'm speaking from a man, of course. Let's say it's your boyfriend. So who you are and where your relationship will be 5 years depends on what you do today. And it's understanding that, because now you have a responsibility, right? It's so easy. In the beginning of a relationship, you want to do everything, right? You want, I think it was Tony Robbins again. He was talking about, in the beginning, your girlfriend tells you, "Hey, take out the garbage for me." You're like, "Oh, okay." You're all up for it. 7, 8 months from now, "Hey, can you take the garbage out?" "Well, I got to take it out." And it's all based on your perspective in that moment. So if you treat life in today's moment, like there is no tomorrow. And I say it's a fairy tale, right? It's a dream. We've heard that from as kids growing up in fables. But the truth is, if you treat people and acknowledge that their response to who you are and the way they speak to you today is based on how you treated them yesterday.
Wow.
And that whole significant responsibility to you in determining how people see you. Right? You own that responsibility. People wonder, why is this person treating me this way? Well, it's because of maybe what you did yesterday. And because men and women think so differently. What we do right now is very easy. We're going to deal with it right now. For women, they may get through this moment, but 2 months from now, that moment comes right back to them. Right? And we have to have an understanding that we own responsibility in how people treat us and how people deal with us. Now, when you and I were speaking based on expectation, right? That's where we get in trouble. Again, in the spring and summer of your life, you were treated and you were around who you surrounded yourself with, your family environment that you grew up with, develops an expectation of how you want to be treated, right? And what you expect from other people, your spouse, your girlfriend. And you can't have a false expectation, or you can't meet someone in their 20s and expect them to be their 20s for the rest of their life. Right? You always hear, and I can attest it to my own relationship, where, you weren't like this when we first got together. Well, no kidding. We would grow, all right? And that's what happens. You grow. So it's, when you get married to someone, or when you get in a commitment to someone else, and it could be even a friend commitment, right? You choose to involve yourself on a personal level with someone based on the expectation of who they will become. Now, relationships get in trouble, right? Is when the other party doesn't meet up or live up to that expectation, right? And it's not our place to judge. You know, as Christians, it's not our place whatsoever to judge. But having an expectation is a form of judgment. So how do you have it so it's humane? And it's having a dialogue, right? And of friendship, a dialogue of honesty, a dialogue that you guys can be candid in your views and developments as you go along the way, and don't allow something as small as a hill to become a mountain. All right, you got to be able to speak about the smaller problems, because if we can't solve the small problems, right, whether or not this person chooses to put more coffee, more tea in your, more milk in your tea, if you can't solve the small problems, then you're never going to be able to solve the bigger problems. So having a realistic expectation from a day-to-day basis in the moment of knowing this person will grow, and identify they may also not grow in the desire that you choose.
Wow.
Right? They may find their own path, but I think it's having empathy in the moment to identify why they're making the choices they're making. And then you can also be a voice into their own development, right? You also have a responsibility, but I think it's a dance. I think expectation is a constant dance, because tomorrow is defined today. And knowing that places significant responsibility on each one of us to make sure we are constantly evolving. And that can be via a regression, or it can be via growth, right? But it all depends on the thoughts you choose to think every single day, and what determines your thoughts is based on what you surround yourself with. So if you choose to look at TV that's packed with action, which I was that guy, I love Kung Fu. My initial response to everything was always violence in the summer of my life, because I was surrounded by violence, right? And that's why the military was a natural path for me, but that's a different story. But I can tell you that your thoughts are determined by what you surround yourself with. So now that I'm in the learning, or the spring of my learning, I find myself constantly listening to people who found success, who've gone through the hard times that I choose not to go through, because I prefer to learn from someone else's mistakes. All right. So our growth is through our failures, and failure is a great thing if you accept it as that, but it's a perspective that you've chosen for yourself. If you look at it like this current situation right now, oh my gosh, the virus, oh my gosh, the economy, oh my gosh, the health system. If you look at it from a negative perspective, then the outcome, seek and ye shall find, the outcome of what you're seeking based on what you've surrounded yourself with will be negative. But if you change your perspective and look at it, well, you know what? I can't do anything about the virus. Can't do anything in the healthcare system because I'm not in it. Can't do anything about the economy. But maybe I could contribute one thing today. That's it. Maybe I can do one thing that's positive. Maybe I can tell you something that's positive. Maybe this Zoom right here may help someone else.
Absolutely.
And all you can say is, you know what, today I'm going to contribute one thing today to the world. That's it. And once you've done that, then you've done your path for humanity, I think. And expectation is the beginning of greatness, or the step forward to the fall.
Wow.
You got expectation is what gets us in trouble. And I think if you, as a Christian, we have a different set of values, right? The Bible lays it all out for us. And it's really, you have the Old Testament God, people say the New Testament God, but I love the fact that Jesus came and said, love one another. So if your response to everything you're hearing, if you choose to fill yourself today with movies that are of love, books that are of love, I guarantee tomorrow your response will be in love. Your response will be of love. So our choices today define our expectation tomorrow. Our choices today will impact tomorrow. So I think we have a responsibility to make sure that we define expectations that people have for us based on what we do today. And that places all the responsibility on you.
Wow. JT, man. And this is why, again, and I've told people this too before, this is one of the reasons why I love coming to you, because anytime I have an issue and I'll come to you and we'll have lunch and I'll start complaining about something or someone, you always bring it back to me. What can I do to make the situation better? What can I do to help that, turn out better? I love also, and I shared this with you the other day when we were talking, that this whole idea of not judging people based on an expectation of them or their potential even, or where they could be years from now. it causes us to be patient, right? It causes us to see, hey, you know what? Where this person could be in 20 years, it's going to take them 20 years to get there. And I love what you just said too. And you didn't even say this the other day. How can I help them move in that direction? Not give up on them, not move away, but how can I help them move in that direction? This is just absolutely brilliant, JD. I appreciate you more than you could realize in my life, man. So we got to kind of wrap this up. I've got two questions for you as we kind of wrap this up. You know, the reason why I wanted to invite you on it is Memorial Day weekend. And so I want you to say something about that. But before we do, one more thing about you, JD. You are an amazing father. You're an amazing husband. I know you very well. I've seen you. You know, we were talking about this. And I got to say this. You said this to me in confidence, but I'm going to put you on blast. You talked about how your daughter is starting to kick your butt when it comes to working out. And let's hope Tori doesn't watch this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you said that to me the other day, and I thought that's what led to our conversation about being the fall of our years, because you're getting weak, my man. You're getting weak, and your daughter is showing you the weakness of who you are. So I just want to say that.
Thank you.
That you're the older of the two of us, and so you're getting weak first. But in all seriousness, JD, you are one of the greatest dads I know, man. I love how you brag about your daughters, how they love you, they respect you, you respect them, you love them. What advice do you have for any dad or mom, but especially for the dads out here who are watching? What advice do you have for us today?
Hey, so that's a tough one. You look at the generation we came up in, right? Yeah. I came up in a very conservative generation. Speak back. As a matter of fact, we weren't allowed to ask the why. You know,
yes.
And, you know, why are you like that? Why do I have to do that? You know, and that's even, you know, when we first had Victoria, Tanya was like, you know, she was, I remember very clearly, you know, I would tell Victoria to do something, but why, Daddy? Well, number one, because I said so, all right? And that was the generation, that's the generation we came up with, right? As a matter of fact, the minute rule was to come out my mouth, that's why my upper lip is still bigger, you know? It's like, what are you thinking of, you know? So, we lead naturally from a state of fear, all right? And I say that it's not a negative thing. It's the fight or flight mentality, right? It's knowing that your body will naturally your mind will naturally try to keep you safe. Mm-hmm. So we have to be mindful of that. I see a lot of traits in my younger one, Nisa, where maybe not my most positive traits. I see it in her. And I see some of Victoria and Tanya, maybe not some of her most positive traits. I say that because my response to it is fear. And I need to be cognizant and deliberate in my action towards dealing with that. And as parents, we see ourselves in our kids. And sometimes that's not a positive thing, right? A lot of the times it's negative because we see our failures sometimes developing. We see that the spring of their lives. Wow. And we've seen some of those things that we made mistakes at. We've seen them develop. We try to steer them away from them. And there's nothing wrong with it. You can't control the thought. Mm-hmm. There's no original thought. You can't control it, but there's original action. Mm-hmm. What you do with that thought has to be deliberate, all right? And it can't come from an emotional state. Yeah, my mom whooped the crap out of me. I'll be honest with you. I deserved every one of those whoopings. But the lesson was lost because my focus was now on the whooping and not the lesson I should have learned. Mm-hmm. All right. And I know it came from a place of love. Mm-hmm. I knew, and now probably not back then. I know now today that, you know, that was the only tool they had in their toolbox at that time. But with the proliferation of technology, we have no excuses. We have so many teachers right now available to us. The minute we click YouTube or the minute we get on Google, and for those Apple lovers, Safari.
There you go. Yes, sir.
You know, we have no excuses. We have so many teachers available to us at a moment's notice that we can continually educate ourselves. But I would tell you as a father, your actions should be deliberate. And it can be deliberate unless you educate yourself. And you have to realize that you are always learning when it comes to dealing with a personality. And I have two daughters, same upbringing, two completely different personalities. So accepting those personalities and knowing that there's greatness, like that there's seeds. Every time I deal with them, there's seeds every single day that I need to fertilize and I need to water. And I can't do that from a place of emotion. All right. According to Jolar, my friend, is emotions are mushy.
Wow.
You know, and for me to be deliberate, I need to take that emotion out of my limbic system, push it to my neocortex, and make sure that my action and the example of a human being, of a leader, of a father, of a citizen is in light of the person I want them to become. And that's tough. That's being slower than you want to. That's not responding or reacting immediately. That's being deliberate. And it may mean eating some humble pie. You know, I had to do that with Victoria, and I hope you edit that piece out. But I had to do that as well. You know, it's man, she's getting stronger. I have to work harder.
Yeah.
Because if her aim is to beat me, that means I need to give her something higher to aim for. And that's tough.
Man, that's wisdom right there. Wow.
Yeah, but it all goes back to your responsibility as a parent, as a leader. If they choose to aim to you as being the person to model, that means I need to keep moving that bar. And you can't do that unless you put in the work. And that's the simple truth. So yeah.
JD.
It's tough.
You were just dropping wisdom bombs all over the place today, man. Seriously. This is why I love my time with you, man. Wow. I love that as parents, as dads, we have to keep setting the bar higher so that our children have something to aspire to. That is incredible, man. Thank you for that answer. That's gold right there. I'll be going back and rewatching this and taking notes for sure. Hey, so the reason why I asked you, number one, this is really exciting for me that you're the first interview that I've done this way. This is our first, we had to figure this out through Zoom. And this is the reason why, because you're just so filled with wisdom. This is Memorial Day weekend, and if we're not careful, I came from Indiana, and back in Indiana, Memorial Day week, now it's very patriotic back there, and they take this stuff very seriously. But if we're not careful, Memorial Day weekend becomes about the sun and the fun and all the barbecues and family, and all that's great and important too. What do you have to say? You've been in the military over 20 years. You've had an incredible career in the military. What words would you give us this weekend as we celebrate Memorial Day weekend?
Gosh. So this is going to borderline controversial, what I'm going to say.
Say it. Bring it out.
Again, what I'm going to say in response to your question, I hope to stimulate thoughts. And the fallen have fallen. All right. No matter what we do today to remember the fallen, they would never receive it. They're already gone.
Wow.
So, and the truth is, so this particular holiday began as Decoration Day, all right, way back. And I'm not good with dates, so I wouldn't go down that road. But again, it was a time in which we decorated the graves of soldiers. And I think it's important to realize that as we choose to reflect and remember those that have fallen, I think it's very important to place our thoughts on why they had to fall. So we are focusing on the fact that these soldiers and sailors have fell in battle. But all the circumstances that led to battle, I mean, if you look at our economy today, if you look at the politics of today, if you look at the divided nation that we are today, they culminated, and again, history repeats itself. It's culminating to one particular place. Now, one side believes they're definitely more superior than the other. They're smarter than the other. This is nothing new. There's no original thought in this. So I tell you, as you think of Memorial Day, I believe those who passed have earned the honor of you thinking about them for their sacrifice. I believe that the families of those that lost their lives due to the cause and the furtherance of democracy around the world, I think it's definitely something to consider. But I would ask you, as you consider this Memorial Day, to consider your contribution to where we are today, the state of society, the state of your little village. I have an amazing village of folks right here in my neighborhood. So every opportunity I get, even for those that didn't want to hear, I pour into their lives because I could control this little microcosm of society. I could control or influence those that are in positions of leadership. And hopefully they'll become better citizens. And I wish that this particular state of learning had came when it was in my summer, so I can be more effective for a longer period of time. But I tell you that my responsibility now is to continue to learn, continue to grow, continue to develop, and continue to point to the lives of those that'll come behind us, which is my kids, which is all the sailors that I lead today. So Memorial Day is very important, but I believe that we are focusing on the end result of disastrous decisions that have led to the fall of many, when we should be considering now, all right? And our country is about to go through a tough moment. You know, this coronavirus, the flu season, the economic downfall. If you look at the global and strategic impacts of movements of different countries, from Brazil to Russia to China to the American to America. If you look at geopolitical or our stability movements within our own country, the elections are coming up. There's so many variables that can lead us down the wrong path, but none of this is new. We've all been here before. This thought process, the concept, what freedom or democracy truly means, what is the right decision, the right to bear arms, the right to read, the right, we've been here before. None of this is new, as Solomon said. All right? There's nothing new under the stars. So why don't we look back for a moment and led to whatever those decisions that led to us actually having a Memorial Day, why don't we make sure that we continue to celebrate those that have gone, and not for those that may fall due to our bad decisions tomorrow. So we have a responsibility.
That is beautiful. Always, as always with you, JD, it comes back to us and what we can do. Yes, it's great to honor those who come before us, but what can we do going forward? Man, I think the world of you, JD. I love you, brother. You are a brother to me. I tell you that all the time. You're the brother I never had. The elder brother that I never had, just to put that out there. Hey, man, would you do me a favor? Would you kind of pray us out of here? Would you say a gentle prayer as we celebrate Memorial Day, and then just for the week ahead of us too, because this is Monday Motivation, and the hope is that people watch this, they listen to it, and they're motivated to do good things going forward. So would you give us a final prayer as we exit the interview?
Sure, let's do it. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for all that we have. We give you thanks for all that we are. Heavenly Father, I pray that this video, Heavenly Father, motivates, influences someone else to do something even greater in the cause of good, in the cause of love, dear God, because Jesus is love. Heavenly Father, we recognize that you sent your son, Heavenly Father, die on the cross, so we may have this moment of freedom, dear God, clarity to know that, all actions should all be based on love. And Heavenly Father, I ask that as we continue to move forward during this week, that someone will be motivated to lead and to be an example into this life of love. And we give all thanks for all that we have, because you are who you are, dear God. We are who we are. And Heavenly Father, we recognize you for being our I am. So in your holy and most magnificent name, may this video go out and be broadcasted to those that are willing to hear, to live, and to love. Amen.
Amen. And JD, thank you for everything today, man. I appreciate you, brother. We will do this again. I promise you that. So much wisdom today.
Looking forward to it.
I appreciate you, JD.
Have a good time, JD.
I'll talk to you soon. Okay. Bye-bye. So if you're still watching this, you get a chance to see that. Obviously, you can tell why JD is a mentor for me, someone I look up to and I respect. And so I hope that this has added value to your life today. And I hope you have a wonderful week, a wonderful Memorial Day. But as he said, it's important to look back and see what we can honor, what we can respect, but also in looking back, look forward and see what we can do to make our world, make our community, our families a better place. Thank you so much for watching today. I look forward to next time, next Monday on our Monday Motivation. God bless you. Take care.